The ancient Greeks imagined fantastical lands to explain what lay beyond their geographic knowledge. The most famous is Atlantis, a sunken land of an advanced civilization. But another mysterious place also fascinated them, Hyperborea, meaning beyond the north wind. Described as either a fertile paradise or a cold, sunless land, Hyperborea was believed to be home to an unknown people, the Hyperboreans. While some Greek authors questioned its existence, others tried to make sense of the scattered, often contradictory descriptions. Rather than a specific location, ancient texts describe Hyperborea through its way of life and natural environment. Over time, these descriptions evolved, suggesting the myth may have at its origin been inspired by a real geographical or historical reality, later reshaped by imagination and belief. So we will discover what is the possible location and find out where is the Hyperborea. Before we can seriously explore the myth of the Hyperboreans, it is essential first to determine the location of Boreas, the North Wind, who is often depicted as a divine figure in Greek mythology. According to ancient sources, from Hesiod to the Hellenistic period, the Hyperboreans were believed to live beyond the reach of Boreas. Authors such as Pindar and Herodotus from the classical period, as well as Strabo and Claudius Ptolemy from the Hellenistic period, referred to this legendary land. As a starting point, we must therefore establish the geographical origin of Boreas. Boreas is often depicted as a powerful divine figure, one of the divinities called Anemoi, the wind gods in ancient Greek mythology, said to be the son of Eos, the goddess of the dawn, by her husband Astraeus, a minor star god. But where exactly did the ancients believe Boreas came from? The answer lies in the region of Thrace, located in the northern part of the ancient Greek world, corresponding to parts of modern-day Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. Both Homer and Hesiod describe Boreas as a wind blowing from Thrace. The mythological tradition even tells us that Boreas fathered a son named Haemos, who became the king of Thrace. According to legend, Mount Haemos, one of the major mountain ranges in the region, was named after him. This story further strengthens the symbolic and geographical link between Boreas and the Balkan region. From this point, it becomes important to understand the characteristics of the land of the Hyperboreans. Since Boreas, the north wind, was imagined by the ancients as coming from Thrace, it makes sense to place the Hyperboreans somewhere north of the Balkans. That narrows down the possible locations to the northernmost regions of Europe. Furthermore, we can establish that there are three main theories about where Hyperborea might have been. The first places it in the British Isles, stretching as far as Iceland. The second locates it somewhere in Central Europe. The third links it to the vast northern plains of European Russia and Ukraine. But trying to pin Hyperborea to a real place has its limits. Focusing too much on imaginary elements, or giving too much weight to theories claiming Hyperborea was a concrete historical reality, does little to advance serious research. The point is to find the possible inspiration of the myth, not to prove that Hyperborea existed. The Hyperboreans were, for most authors, a blessed people close to Apollo. But a coherent demarcation of this people territory is not present in the ancient sources. At least we possess certain characteristics that helps rule out some of the later, less consistent theories from Greek authors who placed Hyperborea in geographically incoherent zones. During the classical period, several Greek authors, notably Herodotus and Pindar, speak of the Hyperboreans more clearly. They help solidify the core elements of the myth. The mysterious Rhipaean mountains are the first element of the myth. The Hyperboreans lived around the river that originated from those mountains, but there's a catch. No one could agree where these mountains were. Some placed them in the Alps, others pointed to a region that could be the Valdai Hills in modern Russia. Others even removed completely the references to the river and the mountains. From here, we move to one of the most debated traditions, the idea that Hyperborea was located in the British Isles, or even Iceland. It's a controversial theory, mainly because it abandons some of the myth's core features, like the river and the mountains. Still, this northern location isn't just speculation. It's clearly proposed by two Hellenistic authors, which gives it a degree of legitimacy within the framework of ancient representations. Diodorus of Sicily, writing in the 1st century BCE, who sticks to the classic vision of an idealized Hyperborea. Another author is Claudius Ptolemy, a geographer from the 2nd century CE, who's more realistic and detached from the myth. The two propose different localizations for the region inhabited by the Hyperboreans. Diodorus Siculus describes the Hyperboreans as living on an island north of Gaul, deeply connected to Apollo, leading a peaceful, joyful life in a landscape reminiscent of the Elysian fields. But this raises a problem. The British climate, even in antiquity, was humid, unstable, and heavily forested. It doesn't match the mythic paradise described. Even if conditions were slightly milder then, they were far from idyllic. Claudius Ptolemy, on the other hand, places Hyperborea beyond the British Isles, after a land past the northern coast of Europe, inhabited by Celtic British peoples. His account is grounded in identifiable ethnographic references. After that region, Ptolemy mentions something unique in ancient literature, the Hyperborean Ocean. He's the only writer to use the term Hyperborean for a non-terrestrial geographical feature. If we follow his logic, and this ocean lies north of Britain, then Iceland becomes a plausible candidate. Its location matches the ancient island of Thule, traditionally placed in this very sea. Iceland's extreme climate and isolation could explain the image of a fog-shrouded, remote, and mysterious world. This geographic tradition, linking Hyperborea to the British Isles and Iceland, stands apart. It doesn't include the classical features of the myth. No Rhipian mountains, no sacred river. Its location is also unique among ancient sources. And yet, its appearance makes sense when seen in context. As Greek geographic knowledge expanded, so did the edges of the known world. According to scholar Asen, this expansion pushed mythical places like Hyperborea further outward. In a mythic cartography, the land of eternal peace must always lie just beyond the latest frontier. So while this version diverges from the canonical stories, it reflects the evolving imagination of the Greeks, adapting old myths to new maps. Still, because it lacks the core elements of the original legend, it's reasonable to conclude that the British Isles and Iceland were not the true source of the Hyperborean myth. They are echoes, not origins. To add, the sources that portray Hyperborea as a paradise are not useful for geographic analysis. They are imaginary elements. Their content is fundamentally mythological. These idealized descriptions belong to a broader literary tradition. Elements such as a paradisiacal land or a race of supernatural beings dwelling beyond the bounds of reality should not be regarded as credible. They reflect the imagination of the authors, not the physical world. The next two traditions bring us closer to the core geographic elements of the Hyperborean myth, the Rhipian Mountains and the river, but their actual location remains uncertain. One interpretation identifies the river Ister with the Volga-Don system, whose sources may lie in the Valdai Hills, possibly thus equated with the mythical Rhipian Mountains. Another tradition places the Rhipian Mountains in Central Europe, identifying the Easter with the Danube, whose source is in the Black Forest, in what is now southwestern Germany. These versions also describe the Hyperboreans as horse-riding nomads comparable to the peoples of the Eurasian steppe. Let's focus on the Central European hypothesis. This view is supported by writers like Apollonius, Strabo, and Hesiod, who situate the Riphean Mountains just beyond the Alps, linking the Easter to the Danube and the mountains to the Germanic highlands. Strabo adds another layer to this theory. He suggests that the myth of Hyperborea may have emerged from Greek ignorance about the internal divisions of the Germanic tribal territories. The confusion surrounding these distant, poorly known lands may have contributed to the invention of a faraway, idealized space, Hyperborea, thus confirming that according to some ancient traditions, Hyperborea was credibly set up in Central Europe. However, Apollonius, though he mentions the Hyperboreans, gives no clues about their location. Another piece of evidence comes from a fragment attributed to Hesiod's Catalogue of Women. If we trust Herodotus's reference to it, the passage might have some credibility. It describes the Hyperboreans as nomadic horsemen, like the Scythians and Hippomolgi, heading south toward the Eridanus, a mythical river often identified with the Po in northern Italy. That journey implies an origin somewhere north, possibly in Central Europe. But there's a problem. Describing the Hyperboreans as steppe-like nomads doesn't fit the geography of ancient Central Europe. The region was heavily forested, not well suited to horse-based nomadic cultures, unlike the open grasslands of the Eurasian steppe. What we're likely seeing here is a blend of traditions, a real origin of the Hyperboreans as steppe peoples moved to a region considered for some traditions to be the Hyperborea. It's an overlap, not a clear origin. In conclusion, the Central European theory can't be completely dismissed. But major issues weaken the case. Now we turn to the third and final tradition, the idea that the Hyperboreans lived in the lands between modern-day Russia and Ukraine. To understand this, we introduce the Cimmerians, placed by Herodotus beyond the Araxes River near the Caspian Sea, a region he seems to associate with the Volga River. Before being displaced by the Scythians, the Cimmerians occupied coastal areas of what is now Ukraine. Herodotus places both the Hyperboreans and the Cimmerians in the same broad region, from the northern reaches of Eastern Europe till the Caspian Sea. Callimachus also alludes to Hyperborean climates, though without saying whether they were cold or mild. He references the Hippomolgi living in those climates, a nomadic horse-riding people, often linked culturally to the Scythians. If we accept even a loose association between the Hippomolgi and the Scythians, it strengthens the idea of link between the nomadic steppe tribe and the Hyperboreans. It also supports the hypothesis that the Hyperborea is lying between modern Ukraine and southern Russia, within the Eurasian steppe zone. Herodotus seems to support the northern placement of Hyperborea by stating that the Hyperboreans live beyond the Riphean Mountains, near an unnamed northern sea. Later sources build on this. Pliny the Elder equates the Riphean Mountains with the Valdai Hills, believed to be the source of the Tanais River, often identified with the Don or Volga. In this reading, Hyperborea lies near the Barents Sea, in the Arctic reaches of northern Russia. Herodotus's account of the ritual journey of Hyperborean offerings to Apollo also supports this theory. He describes a route that begins in the north, passes through Scythian lands, and continues west to the Adriatic Sea, implying a northeastern point of origin consistent with the Russian Arctic. Pomponius Mela, a Roman geographer, places the Hyperboreans even further north beyond the Rhepaean range, beneath the pole of the stars. He describes a land where the sun rises at the spring equinox and sets at the autumn equinox. 6 months of daylight, 6 months of night, a hallmark of the Arctic Circle. Pliny the Elder echoes these descriptions, placing the Hyperboreans beyond the Rhepaean mountains in a land with these same astronomical conditions. In the end, the tradition that places this mythical land in Eastern Europe, specifically in what is now Russia and Ukraine, stands out for its relative consistency with ancient geographic descriptions. Classical sources link Hyperborea to the Rhepaean mountains that can be located in the Valdai Hills, to the sources of the Ister, Tanais, the Don or Volga, and to the northernmost edge of the known world. Culturally, the Hyperboreans seems, according to the traditions, share traits with horse-riding peoples like the Scythians and Hippomolgi, reinforcing the connection to the Eurasian steppe. This Eastern theory, while not definitive, is the strongest and most textually supported of all the traditions explored. It rests on a more coherent foundation of ancient writings, even as it reflects the interpretive nature of myth, shaped by both imagination and geography.